Everyone, Hilltop Knowledge here. In this video, let's talk about incels. Let's talk about the phenomenon, what it is first, before we get into my opinion on it. The incel phenomenon is when people decide that there's no way they're able to find a girl, or that there is a system in play, usually having to do with females and the way they will perceive his overall being, that makes him incapable of finding a partner. And that will lead often into societal blaming and condescendence on females and so on. That's why incels get a bad rep, because they are becoming negative. But the foundation of an incel, the foundation of what an incel is, proves that the incel phenomenon is a problem within their own psyche. Because if a person's a virgin, the person never had intercourse, they're not an incel. You're only an incel if you adopt the approach, I didn't have relations because it's something out there that is preventing me personally. So you're only an incel if you say that there's something preventing it, and I cannot get it whatsoever, or at least normally, because of that dynamic. So that's a lie, because what you tell yourself is what comes to fruition. So there you have it. My opinion is that incels are actually creating their own reality. So in other words, anyone who's a part of this group is delusional. They create a belief system that they can't get a girl. Let's say you have an incel that is just a part of this group and he becomes celibate. So that's not a real incel, right? They're just a pseudo incel, person who wants to be a part of this group because they like the cause, or maybe it benefits them some way, but they're not real incel. They don't actually affiliate with that group. So I don't know what they're doing there. So there is like a spiritual reason why incels exist, and why there's like there have been groups that were made and formality to the system to kind of make it seem like it's a real thing, instead of just a few people that are delusional. And that is something that maybe I'll mention towards the end in passing. I want to make this as logical as possible, that doesn't defy people's regular perception. Something that they can Google and research and be like, oh, what he says is true. I can look that up and I see that he makes sense and he's right. So we said that incels are delusional. Some people who are incels are not actually incels, and you have to actually want to get laid in order to be considered an incel. You want to get laid, and you feel that you can't, and you believe that you won't in the future. So that ending is like caps is like, this guy's completely delusional, that you won't in the future. So all that was criticism on incels and saying how they got a lot to work on. They should see a therapist. They should look into past traumas. They should look into current discomforts, current beliefs about themselves, and work through that to see if maybe they can find an alternative perspective. And then there is spirituality. Okay, so I said I'll mention it in passing. Maybe it will be more coherent and specific. The reason why people end up looking the way they look, sounding the way they sound, acting the way they act, is because there's a kind of rectification system going on. It's there's a feedback system where different energies are trying to cause something they feel is justified and logical, right? To the spiritual forces, they see logic as overlapping with justice, right? Which is kind of pathetic. But that's just the reality. And so they say that this person is not going to get married, or this person is not going to have a partner. So what happens is you have an incel that's created because he or she, usually he, vast majority, probably 99%, they believe that they can't get a partner because whenever they were so close, either to having a girlfriend or to getting laid or to having sex, you know, whatever, like in a formal way or even in an informal way, they were prevented because the spiritual forces did not want them having a girlfriend or did not want them getting laid. And this happens sometimes on a spiritual level. And so if you have enough times that someone's hand gets hit when he puts it near the cookie jar, he's going to believe that the cookie jar will lead to his hand getting hit. He'll have an unconscious belief system that going for the cookie jar will equal pain, it will equal discomfort, and it will mean impossibility. Can you blame him? So spiritually, many incels go under this category where it's really not their fault for being how they are and for thinking how they think. In fact, if you were them, you would do the same thing. And there's a certain logic to it where I understand where they're coming from. So on a spiritual level, this was understood. So they allowed these people to find each other through Reddit or wherever, where they can kind of have a community of being related with. So that explains why they weren't prevented from having a voice in the first place. Most people do think that they're pathetic. That's not going to change really, but they have a community when that could have been prevented spiritually. They said that's not a compassionate thing. We'll let the incels kind of conglomerate, and so they don't feel like complete outcasts. They don't feel completely despondent in their life. Maybe they have hope maybe they have a cause, a purpose that they felt was lacking. I don't know. But you see here is that logically, yeah, you should criticize them, but spiritually, it's not their fault. And they're probably right for how they feel because there is a spiritual phenomenon causing them. So who do you have to punish? You have to punish the spiritual forces. How do you punish someone that you can't touch, you can't communicate with? So, it's like it reminds you of the Tower of Babel when you tried to argue against God. So the way to punish the Satan, right? The way to punish these evil forces is to kind of be good, be a good person. And with every good deed you do, you cancel out negative energy and negativity in the world. And that will lead into positivity. That will lead into the forces causing these negative decrees to be successful. Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with luck. So sometimes you just have to get lucky. You have to be liked by the right people, and there really is no, if you're not liked, you're not liked. There's not much you can do about that. And if you didn't have your time, what often happens is you have your time later in life, or and so you can rest assured that there is a logic to you getting what you didn't have as time goes by. You didn't have peace, you didn't have love, you're gonna get it at some point, The only issue with that approach is that you might be saying, when is it gonna happen? So the only time you can really ask when is it going to happen if you spoke to God personally, you spoke to a messenger of God personally who told you these things. Then you have the right to complain against God. Is he lying to you? What is considered a lie? So obviously God can't lie, or messenger of God won't lie, and it doesn't really make sense to assume that. So you have to assume that he's bending the rules and that it's on him. Every moment that passes after a certain amount of years, like let's say God promises you a lot of money, you don't get it in 3 years. I'd say 3 years like a sufficient amount of time for him to do his thing. More than that seems like a lie. Then you can rest assured that every day that goes by, it's on his image. So he's degrading his own name. And God wouldn't do that. He wants to help everyone. How could he help people if he doesn't have a famous name? So you can rest assured you'll be taken care of. That's on a spiritual level. All right, so that seems to cover everything. The spirits have left me. uh, I don't know what else to say. I would say that it's not their fault. There is a reason behind it. If you understand those reasons, you'll approach it differently. You'll sound more religious than or you'll sound spiritual than practical. Keep in mind the practical and the spiritual are supposed to overlap. They intersect. They're just a different way that they go about. And advice to incels who are ready to hear this is, don't believe that you won't have it in the future, because when something is not taking place right now, it doesn't mean you won't have it in the future. It just means you have to speak to the right people. So, I don't recommend, getting a hooker, but that's not off the table. So what do you mean? So maybe some incels define it as not able to get a non-hooker, But take a step back. I'm not talking about encouraging or not encouraging such a thing. I would say you can get out of it. One is through your own belief systems that you can work at, or you can appeal to God, or you can appeal, not going to appeal to many gods, just appeal to God. Appeal to God. And what's going to happen is then God's going to make things happen for you. And if you want to be practical about that, you can say that God is like you, right? And you're talking to your own subconscious, and so your own subconscious is going to rewire itself, so you can skip a step and just program your mind to think differently in that. But I'm very careful with how I say it, because I don't want people to think that God is your subconscious. I don't want people to think it's not your subconscious. Those who follow me know I created something called CVG, which means it's both, and your interpretation will define what it is. And there you have it. You can change. So pray to God. Not pray to God, oh my gosh, I'm so helpless. It's pray to God. He's actually there. He's behind your eyes. And he'll try to help rewire your mind and help you in external circumstances, however he can. And those situations can be better enhanced if you fill your mind with that motivation, meaning if you set your mind to whatever you want to achieve, you can accomplish it. Meaning an incel should not say, I can't do pickup. Pickup is supposed to be the most macho thing you can do, right? So maybe doing pickup will balance out for the incel nature. But already most incels, I would say, they're at a point where they have certain psychological setbacks. And last thing I think is, incels should not be making fun of women, should not be condescending on women, because it is, I have to be careful how I word this, because women and men are supposed to be different, and they're supposed to function the way they function, more or less, because men are failing and women are failing in how they're supposed to look at their own energies, roles, masculinity or femininity. So that's it. You want to make sure that you're not blaming women. The society may require work to improve on how women perceive men, but then there's also men perceiving women, and And so, but if you have a double standard and say that we can complain about women, but women can't complain about men, and then we have a problem that you do not see the double standard there. And yeah, and eventually you will find a partner because there's someone out there for everyone. Unless you maintain this belief system and create it and sustain it, but then you just create a victim, and you're no longer a victim if you can hear someone like this and still keep doing what you're doing. So then you can't blame anything or anyone else, and then that defeats the whole concept of being someone who tries in life or puts in any effort to do something. Like, how could you be called an incel if you put no effort? You claim that you try to have a woman, but if you don't try anymore, then of course you're going to not be with someone. And one of the problems with these groups is that it breeds arrogance. Like, because collective groupthink and collective ego, and you have enough people believing one way, they're going to brainwash each other, cause each other to conform into an ideology of incels are victimized and they're not cared about. I actually sympathize because I think that every person has the right to be matched up with someone. I think, and spiritually there's matching going on. That it just logically, if we don't fit into the collective ego's paradigm of how you should be matched up, meaning you have to go out and do your thing and meet up with a girl in a particular way and has to have a particular way. In order for me, the collective ego, that's on the unconscious, for me to say that makes sense and you can go and date with that girl. And so there is a problem with there is a big problem with the collective ego that needs to be dealt with. It does not have to be logical. And then, so what you have here is you have me saying that yes, incels have the right to be matched up with people, but don't create a group and say, and refuse to be matched up because I'm an incel now. That's the problem. And so I guess if they were open to it, they wouldn't be called an incel. So yeah, there's a big problem with the incel community. They should be matched up. The question is who? They should be matched up by, I don't know, parents, sex, groups, some kind of system. I mean, I'm encouraging a system where if someone wants to have a partner, they should kind of be assisted to find one. There's some Black Mirror episodes that are kind of cool that have this concept. Maybe there's some setbacks with the algorithm and a level of ethical problems or differences in what you're used to, but these don't dismiss the potential in such a system. It's like the same way, like you can look at the spiritual universe like a massive AI. So if an AI can predict who you're going to marry, you may be against that, but then the spiritual universe is one giant intelligence that figures things out and like that. So why would you, if it's already going on like that, why would you be unethical here? It's because the collective ego has a specific way of thinking, which it's just interesting. If you understand what I'm saying, good for you. Good for you. You must have been following me for a long time. First 10 minutes of this video were the non-spiritual, and then you got the latter 10 minutes, which are predominantly spiritual, and I hope that caters to everyone.